Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Cricket Podcast, where we will be running through. We'll be giving our reaction to the IPL Mega-Auction. The plan for the show is this: we will go through each team. Myself, Jack, and Ross, who confusingly muddled up on YouTube. We'll give our snap judgment on each team, giving them marks out of tens, talking about the big sales, talking about the big con men, and talking about where there might have been a little bit of value to be found in the market. I, as I said, am Jack Hope, and that is Ross over there. Ross, how are you getting on? You watched a lot of the auction. Have you had a good couple of days?
Dramatic. Absolutely. The auctioneer almost die. Then he returns like
laugh at that.
Then he returns like the Undertaker to finish it off. Like adding to the rich tapestry of the IPL kind of theatre. You had people who franchises blew it. Now, there are some franchises we're going to talk about who absolutely blew their chance here. Not to name names, but Sunrisers Hyderabad, you're going to be in for a tough show. And then also, our boy Dan Weston did unbelievably well. Like first time in the IPL, Punjab Kings have come out pretty well, I think. Akash straight into the live chat. An honour for Dan for saving Punjab. He has. They were embarrassing, and they've done brilliantly. So let's get into the show.
Yeah, before we do that, really quickly, can you give the listeners and the viewers just a few messages, and then we will start with. I have a running order here. We will start with. I should have got the running order up. Chennai Super Kings. We're going with one of the big guns first.
Yes, okay. All right. Let's see how many listeners we can retain after we talk through that, through what happens there. So if you're watching this on YouTube, thank you for joining us, first and foremost. Like this video, share it with your friends, subscribe. We're on the road to 10,000. Someone reckons we can get over 300 today, which will get us in to the bracket of 10,000 subscribers.
Yep.
And then also go on Patreon. We had a new Patreon today. So thank you very much for joining us. I will find your name and I will read you out on the show. And also follow us at the Cricket Pod on Twitter and Instagram.
Exactly. You've got to remember as well, Patreon really does keep this show going. Today is Super Bowl Sunday, Ross. I want to be on the Nachos and the Budweisers. Instead, I spent the last hour and a half on Crickmetric. Searching names so fast that my fingertips are bleeding and blistered. Help us afford plasters for my hands. Patreon.com/the Cricket Pod. We also had really good fun on the Discord with the people watching along with the auction. Lots of interaction over the last few days. Ross, Chennai Super Kings. We're going to alternate in terms of who's leading on each one. Can you tell me what happened with the Super Kings?
Yes. So if you'd watched the previous mega auction from 3 years ago, wouldn't have been too dissimilar, really. But they've pretty much tried to retain all the lads. They must have such good banter on the team bus that they were just like, you know what? We want to get everyone back in because we've had such a good time. We won it last year. We don't need anyone else. They've retained 12 players from the previous squad by my calculations. Might be 13, maybe one kind of sneaking in there. And they've almost got this like black magic, I saw it described as on Twitter. They kind of use Dhoni's brain and they kind of go, well, do you know what? If it's not broke, don't fix it. But although they can try and eke out performance from undervalued assets or elderly people, they can't fight science forever. Is my view on this.
Yeah.
Like the one last hurrah was like, it was always like a last IPL was almost like a really good Western film where it's just like this one guy's come back and he's just like, you know what, this is what we had. I think some of their picks were a little bit strange, but at the same time, they're champs, right? They've got the experience. They've been there and done that. You've seen when other teams lose their heads, CSK keep theirs. I think Deepak Chahar went for 14 crore, which for a medium pacer is bonkers.
He's a good bowler. Good bowler.
He's really good. He's a really good bowler, but is he 14 crore? It was a huge move, and even he came out and said, "I don't know why I went for so much. I wish CSK would have paid less for me, so we could have a better team." They did have a couple of interesting overseas picks. Again, have they used those slots in the best manner, right? Dwayne Bravo, who they were obviously going to repick, 4.4 crore. Chris Jordan, 3.6. And Dwayne Pretorius, who was definitely a left field suggestion, like left field pick for me, coming in as well. I think they've got a relative... the batting lineup looks good, right? They've got Gaikwad. Conway, actually, I think we thought he might be a con man. We thought people might get interested in a bidding war. Went for base price. I think good pickup.
Good value. Price. Good value at 1 crore. Yeah.
Yeah, and if you think that he's there to replace Faf du Plessis, who went for 7 times Devon Conway, I think that's a really good pickup. Actually.
Yeah. Agree.
But and they've also picked up the tube. There's some winners and losers in this thing. I think they needed just a little bit more on the domestic batting front. Yes, they repicked Raidu. Yes, they've got a Tapa back as well. But I kind of feel they probably needed another one. If they would have gone for someone like Deepak Hooda or someone like that, might have been more beneficial to them. In terms of some of the other best buys they've got though, Adam Milne at 1.9 crore, really good pickup. Santner at the same price, we've kind of said as a backup option, actually pretty bloody good player. So I think all in all, actually, it's okay. It is okay. They haven't got a replacement for Dhoni, which I thought they might. We thought they might have gone for like KS Bharat, didn't we? But
someone like Josh Inglis or whatever will be in the auctions and overseas next year, and you can pick. I think the overseas market for wicketkeeper batters is super value. Like you get super value there. So if Dhoni does, I was going to say pop his clogs, but that's not what I mean. Hang up his clogs. I
hope he plays for the next 3 years. Like, imagine watching him play for the next 3 years would be an amazing feat, right?
Like
and if you're only playing the IPL, well, why not? Like you surely can condition yourself to do it. So we said we were going to spend 5 minutes per team, so we're going to try. I reckon 4 out of 10, 5 out of 10. I think.
You know what? I'm going to say higher than that for them. I think this is at least a 6. Yeah. So I'm looking at their lineup or theoretical lineup.
Yeah,
it's the same as last year's lineup, but in it they bat like I'm thinking that they might have Santner or Bravo or Chris Jordan at number 9, which is batting really deep.
They do bat all the way deep.
So you make a good point about maybe a bit thin on domestic talent, and you are relying on Raidu and Dhoni and those two to battle aging. And Shivam Dubé is in that lineup as well, and I don't think he's very good, but. They bat pretty deep, and they'll have quite a few people who can bowl. They got Moeen Ali, obviously. They got Jadeja who can bowl. Deepak Chahar will get his 4 overs in. Dubé could do some bowling. Adam Milne.
He was improving, wasn't he? Let's be fair. The Dube, he was improving.
Adam Milne, and then you're gonna get overs out of 2 other players basically. I think it's okay considering the overall quality of the tournament will be a bit lower. I think getting back a team that's very similar to the team that won it last year probably puts them in a good place. It doesn't wow me. We'll give you that. It doesn't. I'm not wowed by this. I'd say 6 or 7. It's above average. The team that
just thought they needed one more batter. Okay, we'll say 6 out of 10 for CSK.
Cool. That'll come back to bite us. We're gonna go, Ross. We're gonna go next to the Punjab Kings. We're gonna talk Dan Weston's boys. I mean, it's no secret, is it? On this podcast, we wanted them to do well. Dan has been, massive on the show, talking about the IPL in the last 2 years. So it was good to see him at the wheel, pulling levers, making decisions. Had his laptop open the whole time, whispering in people's ears. It was good to see him, in action, doing his thing. And I think you have to say they've had a really, really good auction. So looking through the headline picks. Basically, in terms of price, they got Livingston for 11.5 crore. They got Rabada for 9.2, Shahrukh Khan for 9, and Darwan 8.25, and Bairstow 6.7 as well. We should throw him into the star pickups there. Now, maybe Shahrukh Khan aside, I think they're all complete A-list players. You partner them with Mayank Agarwal and Arshdeep Singh, and you've already got the core of a pretty good side. A little bit lower down the list, they pick up Rahul Chahar. That's a pretty good leg spinner, 5.2 crore for him. I think that's good value for someone who's going to give you 4 pretty good overs in every single game. And possibly here, he'll have a little bit of experience bowling at the Wankhede Stadium, won't he, Chahar, as a Mumbai Indians was an ex-player of Mumbai Indians, so there might be a little bit of home advantage considering where this year's IPL is being played. I think I think there are a couple of people I don't absolutely love. I talked about Shah Rukh Khan there for the amount of money they spent on him. Now, partly this is, it's very difficult to detach the fact that they had him already and they decided to release him and buy him back for definitely more than the retention would have cost. They might not have been able to keep him for 4 crore, but I think he'd probably have taken 5 or 6 guaranteed before the auction. They paid a lot there, but he's not bad. He can bat and he can bowl.
Domestic bat. He had a really strong domestic season, right? So in the summer, he was really good in India. So I think, and he's got a bit more experience now.
Yeah,
so,
yeah. I think as well, if we're looking at the wider piece, we do have to remember that although they've absolutely bossed the auction, they did go into the auction with only 2 players and probably only one of them as an absolute, top level player in Agarwal. Marshdeep Singh, we don't really know yet how good he is. So they do still have some question marks. I don't think they've got a great pace bowling lineup, and I think Rabada is out for a couple of games, or at least a couple of games this IPL as well, which won't help the situation. I don't love their 5, 6, 7, which will be Bauer. I think it's Bauer. I'm going to say Bauer, and I'm going to get corrected in the chat. The under 19, Shah Rukh Khan, Modi, and Smith probably. That for me is a little bit weak. But on the flip side, the good things they have are pretty flipping good. Shikhar Dhawan and Agarwal. That's a top opening pair there. Bairstow maybe at 3 or Livingston at 3. The other one at 4. I can't think really off the top of my head. Well, it's up there with Mumbai Indians as a top 4.
It's very strong.
Yeah.
It's a little bit varied. I think who's gone under the radar here, and I've got him in one of my bargains, is Sandeep Sharma. So actually, he's been really effective. And to pick him up for 0.5, I think it was an absolute steal. When you kind of talk about their pace bowling lineup, like if you think of other medium pacers who have gone in this auction, so look at Shardul Thakur, over 10 crore, Deepak Chahar, 14 crore, Harshal Patel, over 10 crore. Sandeep Sharma at 0.5 is a great bit of business. I think they've done really well here.
I think absolutely.
I'm going to go out and think. I think Shah Rukh Khan's going to have a good tournament.
Okay, well, look, if that happens, if that happens on 5, 6, 7 isn't a problem for them, then the power they have at the top of the lineup will blow away, a bunch of teams, and as long as they're sort of near league average, hitting at the death, they'll be fine. A couple of other Dan Weston specials in there, I thought. Obviously, Livingston, he buys him wherever he goes, if he's able to. Benny Howe went. I expect him to play probably a couple of games, maybe the ones where Rabada isn't about. He's somebody that could help that weakish middle order. Might share time with Odie and Smith as well. Ishan Perel, don't really know how good he is, but Dan Weston absolutely thinks he's amazing. He went at his base price, I think, which is good stuff. And Rajapaksa, who is someone that Dan talks about a lot as well, and could potentially be someone to slot in if they can find a place. Maybe 5, maybe 4. Bump Bairstow or Livingston down to 5, and shore up that weakness.
When you read through the batting lineup, he's gone full boundary percentage, right? What you want is people who are going to have a decent strike rate, have at least some control. Like Darwan offers you that control, right? Agarwal can play that role as well. Yeah. But actually, when you've got Bairstow, Khan, Livingston, Shah Rukh Khan, Dean Smith, they're 6 hitters, right?
Yeah.
That's a good place to
be. The only thing I would say to counter that is that playing that way is really high variance. There'll be a huge deviation in the scores you get. Sometimes you will get 240. Sometimes you will get 130. Now, you might get more runs overall than a team that only ever gets 155. But the team that gets 155 can win every match, whereas the team that gets 130 and then 230 can only win the matches where they get 230, and they will lose some of them. So it's not quite as binary as that. I'm going to wrap up because we were trying to keep it reasonably punchy. I've gone an 8 out of 10. Could be higher, but I think because they started slightly behind the pack, the finishing with an 8 is amazing. It could not have been. It could barely have gone better, in my view.
Yeah. Fair. Yeah, I'm in the 8/9 for me. I'm not sure if when we get Dan back on this podcast, he'll turn around and be like, "We had a fucking day out. We had an absolute weekend at the IPL auction, and they've done really well, I think." So 8 out of 10. We'll go with that for these guys. Quickly in the live chat, thank you, Guyan, for the super chat. CSK without Mr. IPL, Suresh Raina, and Faf is unimaginable. What are your takes on this new strategy from CSK, despite being so successful with them? Let's move on at some point. And they got some really good value from Devon Conway. They got 7 Devon Conways for the price of 1 Faf du Plessis, and I think Suresh Raina was past his best. Shouldn't have played last year.
Yeah, I think on Faf as well. There's an element of buy low, sell high here, isn't there? You know, it's I know they're not getting any money for Faf, but Faf, in my view, is not worth the amount of money that people spent on him. There's a lot of overseas players that could produce that. Now he's definitely a starting opening batter in the IPL at the moment, but there are a lot. I mean, Conway's probably one of them that can replicate basically what Faf du Plessis does. He's also old. They do need some people to play like next year and the year after, so they can't just have everyone. They will eventually tail off. It just happens. It just does happen. So yeah, great point, Ross. The next team on our list. It's another big boy. We've really packed the first half of this show. Royal Challengers Bangalore.
RCB. Right, so they had an interesting auction. Mike Hesson, as we know, big brain, right, Jack? Like that's what everybody knows.
He's got glasses. That's how you know.
They released videos last year of him being like, "We're going to game this system. We're going to embarrass some people, etc." They had the opportunity to retain a couple of their players who they went out and spent more on. So Harshal Patel and Hasaranga. They went big on Hasaranga, 10.75 crore. They obviously overspent for him. And I also think on Harshal Patel, they've overspent slightly. But that has to be measured, right? They chose to retain Kohli. And I know we're not massive buyers of Kohli on this podcast when it comes to T20 cricket, and there's all kinds of brand reasoning and value to the organisation, whatever. But when you do that and spend so much money retaining Kohli, it gives you less of an advantage. So I think they misdealt their retention hand, as we've talked about before. They've picked up 2 players they've had for more than money, so that's not a great start. They've then picked up a 37-year-old Faf du Plessis for 7 crore, when they probably didn't need to spend that much from. If you look at someone like David Warner, who went for less money than that, is a little bit younger. I'm not too sure what value they've really got there. However, they've also bought the likes of Finn Allen, who they had last year. We know that he's a intent machine, which everyone has been using, by the way. Have you seen this on Twitter? On Twitter, on the ESPN thing, everybody is using the term intent machine. Pretty sure it started here. And they also lack some left-handers in their batting lineup. So I think they're lacking in the batting depth department. There's a lot of pressure on whether Kohli will get rid of the captaincy and be amazing. I hope he will be, because that means that the show is going to be much better, right? And Maxwell is obviously the big show. So hopefully that works out. Where they have done really well is their bowling lineup. So when you already have some overs from Glenn Maxwell, you want to be building what you have a little bit wider than just Siraj. And they've brought in World Cup winning and IPL champion Josh Hazlewood. They've obviously got Siraj already. Harshal Patel we've talked about. Hasaranga we've talked about. There already you've got 16 overs there. That's 16 good overs that you could, or maybe 15 if you only bowl 3 for Hazlewood. And then Shabazz Ahmed is also an underrated pick, I think, the left armour. And then they've got good backups in David William Berendorf. That is a decent bowling lineup with some good lower order hitting, right? That 7, 8, 9, 10, again, they're the people who can come in and hit you those really important, 15 or 5 balls. So I think they've done quite well there.
Yeah,
pick. Yeah.
So I was going to say, just strategically, we did speculate that they might be one of the teams that spend loads of money on a small number of players. And I think that kind of is what they've done. They've obviously had, like Hasaranga's the best example here, they obviously decided that we absolutely want that guy, like his skill set. We can't avoid, we can't imagine not having him. So we're just going to keep bidding and bidding and bidding and bidding. We'll see how that works out. I mean, it kind of did work out for them last year, didn't it? But carry on.
I thought they were really good. Yeah, they were really good last year. And you saw how I think some people, like Glenn Maxwell, took full responsibility, right? He was brilliant last year. And let's hope that happens again, because he's fucking brilliant to watch. But I think when you look at who their best buys are, I think they got a great deal for Dinesh Karthik. 5.5 crore, I think he's a good pickup, lower order hitter, wicket keeper, great shirts instantly, and a lovely bloke by all stretches of what we've seen. But it gives you a little bit of what's the word? Some trust in that bottom order. If you lose the top order, you've got someone to bat with that lower order. And I think that is a good thing, because sometimes you see some others panic in that kind of situation. And Dinesh Karthik has got that experience to kind of lead them through there. Finn Allen, I've already talked about. 90 lakh was a good pickup. Ex-Royals player Lamraw, that's 95 lakh, the left-hander. I think he's quite useful. And as I've already mentioned, Shabazz Ahmed. I think overall, as I said, their batting looks a little bit light, but they've got some massive name players in there who could really come out for them. I'm disappointed that they didn't go back in for someone like Padikal, but their bowling lineup genuinely looks excellent. And if you kind of go through kind of the champions of kind of T20 competitions, normally the better the bowling lineup, the more chance you have of winning the competition, right? So I think probably a 6 out of 10 for me. I don't know, it's 5 out of 10, 6 out of 10.
Yeah, I'd probably be around 6. I'd maybe even bump it up to a 7. Based on the fact that they've managed to retain Mohammad Siraj for just 7 crore. I don't know what he'd have gone for in the
when Prashant Krishna's going for 10 crore.
Yeah, I think it's pretty good. I mean, they have Maxwell, Hasaranga, Hazelwood's decent. Faf du Plessis, provides great stability. I'm wondering who's going to bowl. Well, I mean, yeah. Let's say 7 out of 10. We don't need to. We are planning at some point this week to do a bit of a deeper dive where we talk maybe best 11s and that sort of thing. But there are a bunch of guys that obviously we didn't know would be picked up by different teams that we'll have to go and research to put together a decent show of that nature. So to steer us away from that now, do you want to move on or?
Oh, well, there's a couple of questions. So Satvik asked around, is Hazelwood a good pick for RCB after today's performance? Absolutely. Like he was great last year. He's a safe pair of hands. Berendorf saying people that he's kind of underrated. Who's going to be the next captain for RCB is kind of the big question there, Jack.
That's a really good one, isn't it?
And you've got different options, right? You've got Faf. I mean, it could go. Imagine if Virat took it back. Kartik is another option in that space. I kind of think if they were going to go that way, I'm not sure you give it to Glenn Maxwell. He's already bowling for you, already batting for you. You kind of don't want to do that, right? So that's why I think they might have spent a bit more on Faf du Plessis. I think that he might be the one who's going to be given it, and there might have been a bit of a captaincy tax on him.
That could definitely be true. Are we ready to move on to the Rajasthan Royals?
Yes. Oh, yes, please.
Yeah. Okay. We had a super chat through? Do you want to read that out actually, really quickly?
Can we get a BTS episode with Dan? Would love to know the background work and their thought process they had during the auction.
We'll try. We will try and do that. Yeah. Don't know when it'll be, and we don't know because there'll probably be media people involved that tell him what he can and can't do related to the auction. But if we can, we will.
He's a big time Charlie now, isn't he?
Yeah. Dan will be on the show in the future. Obviously he might have to be sensitive around some of the IPL stuff, but he said he'll be back. So yeah, hopefully, fingers crossed. Rajasthan Royals are next on the docket. Now they're another team that picked up. Well, spent quite a lot of money. I've picked up some big names. Some of the names are pretty big. Prasidh Krishna, you've mentioned him already. 10 crore man, millionaire overnight. That's what the IPL's all about. Turning people like Prasidh Krishna into millionaires. Shimron Hetmeyer, 8.5 crore for him. Trent Bolt right at the start of the auction, another 8 crore there. Yuzi Chahal, maybe the best Indian leg spinner, 6.5 crore, probably decent business. And Ravi Ashwin for 5 crore. Now, it's an interesting one with Rajasthan Royals. Because I'm not really unsure where I come down in terms of whether what they have done is good or not. I think that the 11 that they're going to be able to put out when it comes to 31st of March, whatever kickoff date is, I think that 11 is going to be quite good. You're going to have Josh Butler opening the batting, Padikal's in the team, Samson. Shimron Hetmeyer, I don't think we all love him on this podcast, but he can do a job. He's a decent number 5, isn't he? They don't have a hole at number 5 like some of the other teams. They don't bat particularly deep, it has to be said, but their bowling will include people, will include Bolt. They'll get 4 decent overs out of Krishna, you'd think. Chahal's a really good leg spinner. And you've got Ashwin who'll probably do an over in the power play and 3 in the middle to control things. Who their 5th bowler is, again, a bit of a question mark. But there's the genesis of an okay team there. Having said that, the way they went about sort of constructing that was frankly bizarre. Like, they were just bidding for any top order batter they could find at the beginning, and it was like, lads, you've retained a top 3.
Top 3. Yeah, got 3.
Yeah. Why are you going mad for Padakal and even Hetmeyer? Is that actually what you need to be sorting out right now? As it happens, I don't know. It's sort of come out. I think all right, Ross.
Well, I think what some of the bits I was reading and kind of going through it and trying to look at this team and go, right, where are people going to bat? For England and T20 cricket in general, Joss Butler should be opening the batting. But we saw them last year, they're playing him in like 4 or 5, didn't we? Like, we saw them moving them around because of the people they'd selected. Here they've almost done a similar thing, right? They've got Padakal, Jaiswal and Samson, all of whom can bat in that top 4 with Butler. So it'd be quite interesting to see what they do there. As you say, Shimron Hetmeyer, I think they've overpaid for Shimron Hetmeyer there, 8.5 crore. There was definitely better value. But like we say, where's the 4th overseas player coming into that point? And actually, Jimmy Neesham, Nathan Coulter-Nile kind of in that way. But again, that doesn't fill me with those. Yeah. They're not brilliant, yeah. And so it's just whatever they kind of do there is going to be quite interesting. But yeah, it was a strange strategy because they did, as you said, loads up front, and then they were kind of going, oh, do we dabble in the middle? And then we're just like, yeah, we'll buy loads at the end. Very, very strange.
I'm also really unsure, and this is probably what makes it. I think I've got them about a 5 out of 10. I'm really unsure who their death bowler will be, and a lot of teams in the IPL basically don't do anything and then target the death, and that leaves you a little bit exposed. Trent Bolt, great in the power play. We've seen him get hit about a lot at the end. He's the senior bowler. He's definitely have to do one of those overs at the end. Prasith Krishna, look, he's fast. He's an enforcer. He's a good hard lengths guy. Does he have a couple of slower balls, and does he have the accuracy to bowl at the death? Can they make Ashwin do it? Maybe.
It has to be on the paces, right?
Yeah.
I think it has to be, and it will depend on what the future of Navdeep Saini is going to be, right? So he didn't do particularly well at RCB, but now there is that opportunity to go, right, what do we shape this team into? I think they've got enough to work with. If they had been given a big pile of Play-Doh and told to mould a side, they've got enough Play-Doh to do a good structure.
Yeah, they didn't throw any of the Play-Doh away.
They've not eaten the Play-Doh. They've not put it in their ears. They've got enough to play with, and I think it's going to be interesting to follow them. I'm not sure why they picked up Daryl Mitchell. If you could explain that to me, it'd be good. Don't know why.
I don't know either. I was going to try and come up with, I mean, he was at the World Cup. They opened the batting at the World Cup. He was in the final of the World Cup. So I don't know. We had a question on Patreon here. We've got a few Rajasthan Royals fans in the fraternity. Adam Dallimore says, as a massive Rajasthan Royals fan, I feel like we have done the worst business at the auction. Seems like we forgot to bid for players and played way over the odds for Krishna. Then at the end it was comical, reminded me of a football club in January transfer window, desperately bringing in some players, bottom of the barrel type talent. Also surprised how much Jofra went for. I will be honest, I don't think they did the worst business. I think the business was passable.
I think they've got 11 players there. They might not be the best 11 players, but they've got people they can rely on, which they haven't had before, right? If you look at the last 3 seasons, they've either had massive injury crisis and then they've had to play a bunch of children who just weren't good enough at that time. They've actually got an 11 who could, on their day, come together and win. I think that is a step forward in the right direction. That is,
you have a team that in theory might not be rubbish. Let's talk about Mumbai Indians.
Yeah, we've had a couple of super chats in the meantime,
okay,
so thank you very much for that. Harry Krishnan asks, do you think CSK will able to continue its legacy after MS Dhoni's retirement? Who knows?
That's a great question. We don't know.
It's a great question.
That's the joy of sport, though, isn't it? Right? That's why we watch it. If the answer was like no, then you might as well just pack up the whole organisation when he goes. It will be a big change. It will certainly be a huge story in cricket.
Yeah, definitely. And then Vic, as it does Rassi warm the bench at Rajasthan Royals? Who does he come in for? Hetmeyer. I can't see Rassi playing a lot of cricket in this team.
I can't. I think he's a little bit. I can't remember the exact dates. Does he miss the beginning of the IPL with South Africa as well? So he'll be sort of dropped in halfway through. I don't know if people will be. It's not like Rassi van der Dussen's arriving. It's not like Rabada at Punjab, is it? It's I think bench warming, but you never know. Do you? It could start badly for Hetmeyer, and they want to make him change.
Yeah. Who's up next, Jack?
Mumbai Indians.
The Mumbai Indians. So, where do we start? They went in with one target only, and that was Ishan Kishan. It was clear for absolutely everyone. They literally kept their powder dry until he came out, and then everyone else was almost scared of what Mumbai Indians were going to do. And everyone wanted a piece of the rock star. They wanted a bit of the mullet. They wanted the piercing. They wanted the left-hand wicketkeeper, who is a supreme talent. And they spent 15.25 crore. And from that was a brilliant pickup, right? He was the player to get, Jack. They won the auction.
I cannot believe, and we'll talk about Sunrisers later. I cannot believe that the bidding for him stopped below the level at which some players were retained for. It actually baffles me that some people are. There was a one-off talent in this. There was a one-of-a-kind talent in this tournament in this pool, who was a ticket for a couple of franchises to go from behind in the race to ahead in the race. And they just let Big Daddy come through the middle and just clear up. And Mumbai, they weren't even subtle about it, were they? The geezer was just like, straight away, we're going to have him. We're going to have him. Punjab
they didn't do anything before.
Yeah,
nothing before.
They waited.
They were just like this. Should we have some lunch now? Should we just wait for this dude to come on? Like, it was ridiculous.
And then it only went up to 15 crore. I think Mumbai would have spent half their budget to get him in. And I said this on the preview. I thought this is basically what Mumbai's strategy would be. It would be, let's complete this sort of Indian murderer's row of talent. Let's get back somebody who knows the coaches, who we can work well with. Let's get in somebody who bats left-handed in amongst two, gun right-handers at the top of the order, or three gun right-handers if you throw Pollard in as well. And it meant that like the rest of the auction was pretty flipping easy for them as well. They did exactly what I said. Jofra Archer aside here, they sort of, well, actually, and Tim David, they picked up a bunch of quite cheap overseas players, and then they filled their lineup with like whoever else they can find, and they're going to have 7-8 really good players in every match.
They've got a reputation of being slick operators, right? And everyone in the auction, every franchise has exactly the same opportunity, pretty much. I know retention does, but the same opportunity to approach the auction in a well thought out manner with a serious plan and some backup. Some of the other teams looked like they had no idea what they were doing. They had multiple people at the table. They had people with headphones on going, right, who am I actually taking orders from here? And then bought some fucking awful players. And I thought Mumbai Indians, again, kept their nerve. We're just like, you know what, we're going to do all right here. And they've not only built a squad that is competitive now, but they've also built one that is going to be good over the next 2 to 3 seasons, maybe even longer, right, with their retentions. They backloaded their approach, which gave them an advantage on the Sunday to pick up the likes of Archer and Tim David, as you said, when they just had more buying power than pretty much everyone else, right? They kind of bullied their way through there, whilst also picking up Tamal Mills at 1.5 crore. Like,
that's
one of the
baffling.
best death bowlers. Yeah, one of the best death bowlers in the world. And people just like, yeah, you can have him to go along with Bumrah and Jofra Archer. You're having a laugh. Like, just at least bid for him. At least make it more challenging for them. It was almost unfair for them. There was one point when they bid for Arjun Tendulkar, and people were just like, yeah, you can have him. It's not a God-given right that Mumbai Indians just get the talent. You can bid against them, guys. It just didn't really make sense to me. But I also, when you look at their approach, they never really go all out on, in the last couple of years at least, on buying spinners.
Yeah, this is the big question about this team. Yeah, is where's the spinner?
Yeah, and I think in Murugan Ashwin, who was at Punjab before, I think isn't a bad player at all. Actually, he played a bit, but he is a downgrade on Rahul Chahal.
I think that is without a shadow of a doubt. Yeah.
They picked up Fabian Allen as one of their last picks as well. But again, the overseas slot makes it difficult for him to kind of slot into that side. And so that is probably the only weakness in this side of turning around and going, look, where's your out and out spin option? Which I think is okay. I think Markande can do it, but again, they've just downgraded, I think, a little bit in that space.
There's a view that Sanjay Yadav, who bowls left arm orthodox, might be in the lineup as well. I think Mumbai have always been a little bit different on this, or not maybe always, but I think on spinners in general they have taken a little bit of a different line to some other franchises, in that they attack a bit more with pace, I think, than they do with spin. They had Trent Bolt trying to take wickets in the power play, Jasprit Bumrah trying to do Jasprit Bumrah stuff at the death. They've been the sort of two strengths. And Chahar's like a fine spinner, but they've been happy dropping him for matchup reasons in finals and things like that. It's not as though the best player in the world has walked out the door here and is irreplaceable. You're probably talking about 2 or 3 runs a match difference between Murugan Ashwin and Chahar. The other thing to bear in mind here is that they play their home stadium. It does favour pace bowling. It's not a spinner's graveyard, but it's not a pitch which you think, it's not Chennai, is it? It's not the Chapok. You're not.
That's the opposition they're playing, right? The other teams are picking players who have got a good record against spin, and actually you find in the middle overs that they pack their team with the people who are good against spin, because that's what typically they come up against in T20 cricket. Mumbai Indians' approach is to bowl some pace in the middle overs and kind of try and bust that narrative, right? And kind of do that, and it's been really effective for them. They won the IPL 5 times. So, I think
if I were them, I'd have bid less for Tim David, who I think is reasonably replaceable. I might be wrong on this. Maybe he turns out to be this stunning god cricketer, but we don't know that is definitely true at the moment. Recent PSL knocks aside, and I'd have maybe bought back Chahar or Chahal and balanced it that way. But they are consistently the best team in the tournament, so they probably do know what they're doing.
Yeah. I think, Tim David has replaced Hardik Pandya for them, right?
Yeah.
They've managed to get Archer and Bumrah. We've talked about the limited spin contingent. This is 8 out of 10, 9 out of 10, I think, for an auction for them.
Yeah.
Without just one spinner missing, perhaps. But even then, that doesn't break their approach, and it doesn't look like they're going to break their approach anytime soon. So, let's go 9 out of 10 to mix up.
Yeah, 9 out of 10. We're not going to give anyone a 10, are we? No one ever gives 10s. That's just not what we do. We have a super chat. I can read this one out from Harik Krishnan. Sunrisers Hyderabad should have gone for Ishan Kishan up to 17 crore, as they don't have Indian hard hitting middle order batsmen. MI's core would have been destroyed. Yeah, I mean it's exactly that. That should have been what SRH thought. Unfortunately, I'm not really sure they're capable of thought. They're kind of like a rock, aren't they? Or a plant. They're maybe a plant. I don't think they're a rock. They are sensitive to light and stuff like that. They react to conditions that aren't good for them. But they're bad. Just quickly, is that the 5th team, Ross?
It's 50, yep.
If you are watching this stream live, or if you're watching it later, or if you're listening to the audio, please hit like and subscribe. Support the podcast. It makes a big difference to the potential for the Cricket Podcast vehicle to.
We're going to be covering all the IPL, right?
Yeah.
It's just a month away now. We're going to be covering all of that, and we covered it last year, and we'd be hard pressed to find 2 Western idiots and plus Max who knows more about the IPL than us. So let's get on with the show, Jack. Come on.
Right, come on. Let's.
Who's next?
We'll try and speed through it. Well, I was going to say speed through. Sunrisers Hyderabad are next. There's a good yin and yang, isn't it? The Mumbai Indians, Sunrisers Hyderabad. Now, I will be honest here. I find Sunrisers Hyderabad incredibly frustrating to talk about, to watch. Don't really even like their new kit. It makes them look like a bunch of delivery drivers. So this might be biased. However, I have thought about what I'm going to say, and I sincerely do believe that this analysis is correct. Their auction was an absolute shit show. It could not really, given the parameters of what they had to do, spend 90 crore on cricketers. It couldn't have gone much worse. To the extent, I'm going to throw this out there now. I don't think there's a single player that they have managed to recruit that would get into every other team, or would even challenge getting into every other team. Pretty much every franchise here has got a star. The other 9 teams, they might have blown everything, but at least they've got Joss Butler or Rashid Khan. It's a mess. It's a mess. They retained really badly. They lost the best player in the world. They didn't pick up Ishan Kishan, and then like 2 minutes later spent 10.7 crore on Nicholas Puran. They could have
got Bairstow. They were bidding for Bairstow and gave up when he was like, 7 crore, too much. Let's spend nearly 11 crore on Puran.
There was an amazing set of tweets they sent, wasn't there? It was Bairstow's up next. We're bidding for him, and then a couple of tweets later, it was 6.5 crore. We've got Bairstow. 1 minute after that, Punjab Kings signed Johnny Bairstow for 6.75 crore, and it was like, that just sums it up, doesn't it? Like you've figured out what you need, and then you fucked it. You were in there, you did it 80% of the job, and then when it came to it, you pissed your pants and blew it. I want to say the brains trust failed, but it's just not the right phrase, is it? There's no brains trust here. This is a bunch of clueless muppets who've somehow ended up in charge of a cricket team and are driving it into the dirt. Ross, have you got anything to say? I've got some bits, bits, but yeah.
So there's a couple of people like Chato in the chat saying that Puran is their star. And don't get me wrong, Puran is a good player. Yeah. We've seen him play before. He is a good player, but he is not elite level, right?
He's not Johnny Bairstow. He's not Ishan Kishan.
He's definitely not those. I mean, and if you just take his stats from last year, and I know one season is not a great sample size, but Puran for Punjab Kings played 12 games last year, scored 85 runs, an average of 7.7 with a strike rate of 111, and he's just gone for 10.75 crore. That just doesn't make any logical sense of why that happened. And we know it happened with Glenn Maxwell, but Glenn Maxwell also bowls spin.
Yeah,
and he's also done it before in the IPL. Puran, not a great position to be in.
Yeah, well, that's an understatement. Not great. They also picked up Washington Sundar for 8.7 crore, Rahul Tripathi for 8.5 crore, and again, they're not. These aren't bad cricketers. It's not. It's what we're saying here is not that they are useless players. They would get into other teams' 11s. They just wouldn't get into all of the other teams' 11s. They'd be, slightly marginal picks. You shouldn't be spending that amount of money on those players. I don't think, particularly when you have huge problems with other parts of your team. Well, your whole team's a problem. Like actually try and get good players in would be my tip for them.
Mm-hmm. We've had a super chat, Jack, from Sai, and we always love a super chat. But on this occasion, but I think there's an unreasonable negativity around Sunrisers Hyderabad. They have been in 5 out of the last 6 playoffs. The auction were decent. Right, I want to make a bet now, and I will bet you 50 quid to anyone who wants to take it that Sunrisers Hyderabad will not make the playoffs
this year. If you're, not at evens. I think they're a real long shot to make the playoffs. I'm afraid. I mean, I'd think 5 to 1. They can do it. It's T20 cricket. It's T20 cricket, and there's loads. You can get lucky in 7 of your matches. That happens all of the time. Look, Australia won the T20 World Cup, for crying out loud. Nobody in their right mind will tell you Australia are the best T20 team in the world. But the nature of the tournament and the volatility means you can do that. You can do that in the IPL too. I've
a few at all, Jack.
I've got a few more negatives. The and this relates to the Super Chat. So yeah, they did. If you look over the last 3 years, they did make the playoffs 2 of the last 3 years, and beyond that as well. Last year, they won 3 matches, and they were the worst team in the tournament. Maybe the worst team that's ever played in the tournament. The year before that, I think they won 7 matches and squeaked in on net run rate, pipped KKR. Now, that's not a good performance. That's lucky. What you have achieved there is you've only managed to win half your games. By no measure is that good. The year before that, they made the playoffs. They won 6 out of 8 matches. So they're not a winning. They're not this winning machine. They were really lucky twice to get through with poor records, and well, on one occasion, or well, both occasions, net run rate.
And the players who got them there, they didn't retain, right?
Yeah, and the play. Yeah, this is the other thing, and this is the from the point of the strategy. What they're aiming to do, and we said this is what they would try and do based on who they retain. They got Williams, so they'll try and build a team that can regularly get to 150, and then a bowling lineup that can regularly restrict teams to less than that, or defend 150. I don't know in 2022 whether that is possible, and I really don't know whether it's possible if you don't have Rashid Khan, who is able to restrict teams scoring in the middle overs, but also take you 2 wickets a match or a wicket a match. It's so hard for you to do that. I just can't see it.
Well, they've done that. Joe. They've done the thing. Like we the best way of comparing this kind is to compare what they had last season, right? I think it's the fairest way to do it. Your leg spinner, they've got their main spinner, is now Washington Sundar or Shreyash Gopal.
And he was rubbish.
Okay, he was pants for Rajasthan Royals. He didn't even play for Rajasthan Royals. He was that bad. And let's be honest, like neither of them are fit to tie the shoelaces of Rashid Khan in T20 cricket.
Yeah, so there's a few other, these are the positives, yeah? So it could work out. Maybe Abhishek Sharma breaks out. He's a young guy. He's looks like he could be a pretty talented batsman. Maybe Tripathi, we like Tripathi, yeah. I don't know if he's an 8 crore player, but maybe he turns out to be an 8 crore player. Maybe Williamson has a golden year, like I think it was 2017. That could happen. He is a good player. Look at that World Cup final innings. Like maybe he'll play a few of those knocks. Maybe Markram, and we haven't talked about Markram's a good pickup. Maybe he's like it turns out he has he is the South African Maxwell. Perhaps Puran becomes not useless again. Maybe Natarajan and Bhuvneshwar Kumar aren't injured. The problem here is that every single one of those statements about what could go well for this franchise is qualified with maybe, or it couldn't. This isn't a banker.
But no dead certs.
There are no dead certs. Yeah, there are lots of players that have big question marks. Puran consistency, Natarajan and Bhuvneshwar Kumar injury prone. Markram, can he score as quickly as someone like Glenn Maxwell? Kane Williamson was rubbish in the IPL last year. Will he be that Kane Williamson? It's 2 out of 10.
2 out of 10, fine. Okay, right. Who should we go to next, Jack?
I forgot that was my next job. Delhi Capitals, Ross.
Oh, big Delhi. So I want to rate what they've done here. And I want to rate Mitch Marsh because he seems like a lovely bloke. But a couple of World Cup performances with, let's be honest, a pretty ordinary IPL history isn't that convincing. His record isn't very good against spin. And in the middle overs where he'll be batting, that's all other teams will be targeting. But what I like about Delhi here is that they've kind of accounted for that. They've decided, you know what, he's got a good record against pace. He's in a good vein of form. He's being managed by Ricky Ponting, who's going to know him inside and out. And what they've done is put people around him who are good against spin. Like they bought David Warner. I think that's a good, smart pickup. Yes, he's got a bit between his teeth now because he's got to react for what happened to him at Sunrisers Hyderabad, who kind of hung him out to dry after him being one of their better players over the last few years. He's recovered some form as well in the last few months, especially at the World Cup against, let's be honest, some lesser bowling. But they've also got Rishabh Pant around him, and even Rovman Powell, who was happy to blitz kind of Livingston, Adil Rashid and Moeen Ali when they played recently. So they've kind of got the balance, I think, in that lineup, which I think is good. They've overspent for the Lord, but we love the Lord in this show. 10.75 crore for a medium pacer.
Anyone deserves 10.75 crore for being a medium pacer. It's Lord.
Yeah. Oh, it's him. It's him. Shard will make things happen, Takura. I was loving that. And we thought they would invest in domestic youth players and maybe target one or two from the Royals. And they did that, right? Sakaria has joined, who was probably the best of that bunch, probably ahead of Tiagi in that run. And then for Yash Dahl and Vicky Otswell as well, who are both part of the under-19s contingent. So that, again, is looking good. I think Sakaria for 4.2 crore is actually good to what others were going for in that bracket as well. I don't think that some of them, even like Krishna's faster than him and offers something a little bit different being the right-hander and he's the left-hander. But again, I'm kind of putting them in the same bucket. I know it's quite a big bucket there, Jack, but kind of those domestic pacers, actually the variance there, the people paying 10 crore for some of that stuff, to get him for nearly 4 was a good bit of business. I think getting Mustafizur Rahman, the Fizz, at 2 is brilliant.
I think that's one of the buys of the tournament.
Yeah, he's a consistent performer. He's underrated. I think his skill set will suit the pitches in Mumbai as well. And people don't know they are only playing in Mumbai. They're playing at 3 different grounds this year. I think that is a great buy. KS Bharat at 2 is also good business because it depleted their rivals, right? Sometimes you're looking for domestic talent and what do we need versus what do the other team need? And I think taking KS Bharat out of that lineup is a really good thing. I think they've addressed their problem from last year. They lacked firepower in that lineup, but I'm not 100% sure their whole team has been improved. For example, if I was to think about the resilience in their side, they don't have as much depth, I don't think. So, like, if Norkia goes down injured, and he's been injured this year, there's no Rabada to pick up that slack as your 90-mile-an-hour bowler. They've got Ngidi, or you've got some overs from Mitch Marsh or Shardul Thakur, who are both right arm medium. That's not the resilience you're looking for. They don't have that backup option, but they could be all right. They've got a good, strong lineup in Pant, Akshar Patel, Prithvi Shaw. I think they're doing all right. I think this has got a 6 out of 10 for me, kind of middling.
Yeah, I'd maybe go a little bit higher, but that's partly based on them being able to retain some pretty good players before the auction even starts. I think there's a lot here that depends on how Dave Warner and Mitchell Marsh go. If they're World Cup Dave Warner and Mitch Marsh, then you've got a top order that's Warner, Shaw, Marsh, Pant, somebody. And that's right in the top 2 or 3, or the top 3 of right. It's up there, isn't it? It's a good lineup. If it's Dave Warner from last year or the year before in the IPL, it's not very good. And I really do have severe reservations about Mitch Marsh. I don't think it's logical to spend as much money as they did on somebody that is really limited against spin for a tournament in Asia. I think it smells a bit of Ricky Ponting wanting an Australian to me, and it might not be. At
least it wasn't Steve Smith. It was Steve Smith last year, and I'd say Mitchell Marsh is an upgrade on Steve Smith when it comes to T20 cricket. The only other bit on here is 5.25 for Khalil Ahmed is shocking. Bad bit of business.
Yeah. So I think it's good based on what they had going into it. I don't think the auction itself was great, is what I would say for Delhi. Ready to move on? We never talk about Delhi that much. And for Delhi fans, sorry, but the problem is they're quite sensibly run, but they don't do anything extraordinarily good. So when we talk extraordinarily good, we talk Mumbai, and when we talk like heinous crimes against cricket, we talk Sunrisers, and you're stuck in the middle. But win an IPL instead of just making the final, maybe we'll change our minds. Let's move on to Kolkata Knight Riders, another one of the originals. They made a huge move early, picking up Shreyas Iyer. Because you want 2 Iyers, that won't be confusing at all for anyone commentating or watching. They wanted that combination. Then, and I'm not 100% sure why, they followed that up reasonably shortly afterwards by picking up Nitish Rana for another 8 crore. Now, in my mind, they basically bought the same player there and spent 20 crore on that. And I think the consequences of making that error so early have had an impact on the team they put together. I just don't see that this is very good. If you look at the kind of domestic market seam bowler that they had to pick up, Shivram Marvi, he's below the level of some of the others. If you don't buy Nitish Rana, then maybe you can compete for some of the others. That's my thinking on that. They did get Alex Hales, even though he's a wanker. I think that's quite a good pickup at base price, 1.5. And actually, I don't mind Rahane as well. I think that he could open the batting and do a job in the IPL, especially with it being slightly weaker in standard this year. The problem...
He's also good against spin, right?
Yeah.
And there's that option. And I do think having Rahane and Iyer at the top, well, Shreyas Iyer, there's two anchors you've got there, Jack. But actually, this squad...
Well, they have that, and then Nitish Rana is really an anchor as well. So it's basically Venki Iyer better be fucking good, otherwise they're in trouble. My problem here is that they made that mistake with Rana, and it meant they couldn't upgrade. Well, look, I've got here the difference between Billings and Bairstow is Nitish Rana. The difference between Umesh Yadav and Prasidh Krishna is Nitish Rana. The difference between Shardul Thakur and Umesh Yadav is Nitish Rana. Tim Southey could have been Lockie Ferguson, but you bought Nitish Rana, and that has this horrible impact on everything you do. I've got 3 out of 10, but only because they've got Andre Russell.
I think 3 out of 10 is a bit harsh. I think they've got some really good players.
Talk to me, because they're another one of those franchises that maybe I've got a bit of blind spot for. I don't like them very much.
Yeah, so I think that's fun.
They're named after a car. I don't really like cars.
But we talk about people's approaches to T20 cricket, right? This team doesn't seem like it's built to go and hit 200 every week. And as much as we love that as T20 fans, and we think that people should be like, I don't know, Birmingham Phoenix and run as a franchise like that, sometimes these teams are going, do you know what? We need to try something a little bit different. In Chakravarti and Narain, they're backing themselves to have 8 overs of spin that doesn't cost them too many runs, right? They've got Pat Cummins going to be in there. Shivam Marvi is going to have to up his game. I completely agree with you on that front. I think the issue that there is real potential here, but to me, I want them to be good. I don't know why. I just want them to be good. I think getting rid of Morgan was a good decision. Hilarious that they got rid of Morgan and brought in Hales. I think that is funnier. Really funny.
Maybe they'll make him captain. Edges and Sledges are in the chat. I think they just suggested that. That would be really. I mean, even though I think he is a wanker. Yeah. Well, look. I mean, the reason someone's asked this, he named his dog Kevin, which was like the England/Yorkshire slang name for black people. He's and that's not, that might not even be the worst of his crimes.
He's blacked up before as well.
Yeah, he has blacked up. He was involved in a street fight with Ben Stokes.
Yeah. The guy is a full sandwich short of a picnic.
Multiple bans for drug abuse.
Yeah, he's not. Yeah, just not a tip-top bloke, right?
Yeah.
Anyway. But yeah, so I don't think it's as bad as 3 out of 10. I think looking at their team, I think it's a little bit better than that. But I think, it's not going to be an exciting season for them unless Andre Russell is Andre Russell from 2 years ago, 3 years ago.
He's been working out with the Dallas Cowboys, hasn't he? So
maybe his throwing's going to improve.
Maybe if it doesn't go well, he'll just tackle a few guys. They've got a good running back. That's the main thing that you want. Anything else on this team? We'll move on. Last 2 teams. Lucknow next.
Let's do Lucknow next.
Yeah.
So the Super Giants, I think they've done okay for their first auction. I think they've actually come away with a pretty decent top 7. We got KL Rahul, who 17 crores, an unbelievable amount of money to spend on KL Rahul. But they've partnered in with Quinton de Kock and did that very early on, right? The left-hand, right-hand combination, I think, is really useful. With Huda, again, that domestic middle order batsman it was few and far between to actually pick from that you can kind of trust to play for your team consistently, and Huda provides that. They obviously picked up Stoinis and then have brought in Jason Holder and Pandya, and that's Krunal Pandya. I think they overspent slightly on Krunal Pandya. I don't think he's as kind of got the explosiveness that his brother has, but actually for your first year, I think that's actually a pretty good 7. then with their options around picking, right, we needed some out-and-out pacers to make sure that we're a little bit different. They spent some money on Mark Wood, who we know is potentially made out of glass and has to be managed a certain way and might miss some of the games. But they've also got Kabira and as a backup there. And for 9.5, actually, between those two pacers, I think actually that's pretty good value for them. Avesh Khan was the big spend at 10 crore. But again, in that market, in that bucket of domestic pacers, he's fast. He was brilliant last year, and he is still young. I think that is a good pickup. He's going to play every single game. And that was just the going rate in the market for them. They've spent big, or they've spent all of their money, and they've still got bases to be covered. But that's what happens when you give KL Rahul all your money. I think they've done, as I said, pretty well here. I reckon I'm giving this a 7 out of 10 for their first auction.
I'd say you're pretty close to the mark on that one. So I was just getting the squad list up. I had to put someone in on the naughty step in the chat. I'm not going to read out what they said because then they'd be getting what they want. But they're on the naughty step. I think, like you say, Ross, I think they seem like they might be quite well run. Despite maybe overpaid for KL Rahul before the auction, they have a bunch of guys who are quite good. They're going to bat pretty deep. They got I think De Kock there, 6.7 crore. Is a masterful piece of business. I think Wood is pretty good for 7.5 crore as well. They've basically come in a few categories, I think, and bought like the second best player available at a huge discount and not that much worse than the first best player available, which is just quite a good way to build a squad, right? I think that's sort of what they've gone for. I'd give this the thumbs up.
Yeah, and they've got some backups, right, as well. So picking up Evan Lewis at the end there actually gives them, if De Kock gets injured, you've got kind of a bit of a backup. And if they don't, you know what, we need to up this run rate and we need to build out that team. Actually, you can do that. They've got the insurance policy and Manish Pandey, and thank fuck they didn't spend 10 crore on him like he went for last time. And I think when you think of some of the other players they've got, like Ravi Bishnoi in that
Shabazz Nadeem.
Pi Deem is in there. And I also think it's quite funny to see like what sometimes you look at players who go, oh my God, he was in there for base price and he sold for 160 times his base price. It's unbelievable. What I really like is around Krishnappa Gautam, who CSK paid 9.25 crore for last time, and he's gone for less than a crore this time.
I thought he didn't play a game, did he, for CSK?
That is some come down, that is.
He basically signed for a huge stack of loot, no money, and now he's off to Lucknow to, presumably carry drinks there, but only on 90k for the 8 weeks work. I mean, I don't know what he'll be thinking.
Who knows? But the other bit is Akash, you're right. Sometimes I do take a dig at King Legend, but this squad actually gives him the platform to be the King Legend everyone tells me he can be.
Yeah, if he can't do it here, then he can't do it.
The ball eater is yeah.
Still, I don't understand. We'll talk about King Legend. I'm sure King Legend's like it's like a through line, isn't he? He's in Pulp Fiction. He's the gold watch, except he wasn't in. I'm not going to make that point.
Cannon Fodder's just made me laugh. With 9.2 crore to drop catches at the boundary, which is Gautam. That is exactly what he did. So very nicely put. So let's move on. We've got over 400 odd people watching this, which is absolutely fantastic. So thanks for joining. Subscribe to our channel. We're going to continue throughout the next few teams, and there's going to be so much content for IPL. We've
got one more team. Then we'll do some questions as well. So if you want to, I don't know, give us a super chat, we'll answer your question.
Yep.
Final team. It is the Ahmedabad boys, who are officially called the Gujarat Titans, but that's not a very good name, is it? So we're going to call them the Ahmedabad boys.
Ahmedabad boys.
I mean, why can everyone else do this? Ahmedabad boys. What are they going to do? What was it? Ahmedabad boys, bad boys. What are you going to do? What are you going to do when the auction comes to you? Well, it turns out spend quite a lot of money on not that many players, and then I think panic a little bit. So they did. They obviously made the decision to pick up both Hardik and Rashid Khan for a lot of money, which cut into what they could do at the auction. In terms of where they spent their money. They went hard for Lockie Ferguson, 10 crore, which is maybe a little bit overpriced, but not ridiculous given the price that Seamers in general were going for. They brought Tawatia in, and this one does not make sense to me at all, for 9 crore, presumably to be backup to Rashid Khan. We went through the various upgrades you could have got, or KKR could have got if they hadn't picked up Nitish Rana. This is exactly that situation here. They've spent 9 crore on Tawatia. We
like Tawatia, don't we? We like him as, he
might be a 9 crore player for somebody else. You're not getting it. You're not getting that value if you're this team, and then you've got 2 leg spinners. Rahul Tawatia, he's going to end up having to bat 6 and bowling like 2 overs a game or something like that. Or you're going to be really one-dimensional, and everyone's just going to play. They should
have spent that money on another opening batsman. Yeah, right. They should have been just like, that's what we should have done.
Exactly. So it's after you got Tawatia. Then they bought Shami for 6.2 crore. Okay, I think, bearing in mind the price for other local quick bowlers, and then it really falls off a cliff. Yash Dayal, the next highest paid player at this franchise, 3.2 crore. It's my summary of this. If I was going to summarize it in kind of a nutshell, they've either got really good domestic scouts because they picked up sort of 3 or 4 players in that in a 2 to 3 crore range. Yash Dayal, Sai Kishore, Abhinav Manohar, who have got some okay stats at a lower level, but don't have a huge sample size. So Manohar's got a strike rate of 150, but has only played 4 T20s. I think Sai Kishore, he has played 40 T20s and has an economy rate of 5.5 as a left-arm finger spinner. That's really good, but will that work in the IPL? So there's 2 things here. Either the domestic scouting is really good and they've got a plan, or they're really disorganised, spent too much money on Hardik, on Rashid Khan and Ferguson, then panicked massively. Now, I don't know if this should factor into my thinking, but they did only name the team a week ago. So I think if I was going to bet on whether it's super scouting or panic, I'm probably going to go panic.
You know what happens when I read this team?
Yeah.
Sunrisers Hyderabad. They've almost gone. Do you know what? Sunrisers Hyderabad, and they've probably listened to the guy in the chat earlier, which I really appreciate. But kind of said 5 out of 6, pretty good playoff record. Let's build a team kind of in that image, but with a couple of better players. When I'm looking at this, I just don't really see the batting. Like Jason Roy is in a hot vein of form. We love Jason Roy. I'll tell you all about the time I've had a beer with him. Shubman Gill is an anchor player, right? Yeah. They have to. He's going to have to completely change the kind of player he is to be a real asset to this team. Hardik Pandya has been injured for the last 12 months, pretty much, and forcing it to play. And he could well be, if it's Hardik Pandya, as we said on the previous show, if it's Hardik Pandya, fully fit and an incredible asset. But who in this team, Jack, do you see in the 3 and 4 slot? David Miller is garbage. Matthew Wade, other than the scoop shots he plays against Shaheen and Breedy.
Bit of my notes. Yeah, they just bought a random bunch of crap players.
They didn't have a wicketkeeper. They didn't have a wicketkeeper until like about an hour before the end of the auction.
It was like, have you ever seen the program Storage Wars?
I've seen Storage Wars.
Where people bid for containers that they don't really know anything about. And like there could be anything in there. It could be like all of the original Elvis Presley LPs worth a fortune, or it could be like someone's subscription to the local porn mag. Like it ranges from, it's wild. I think they've sort of done that. They've been like, right, we need some overseas players. We've only got 2 crore to spend, so let's just, whoever comes out the hat next, let's buy them.
They could have had Sam Billings. That was the thing. Here, they could have had Sam Billings in that 4-5 slot, and that would have been perfect for them. But instead, they've got Matthew Wade and David Miller.
Well, they've got
David Miller. I looked at his stats. He has not done anything since 2015, and he's played in every IPL pretty much.
Matthew Wade shouldn't be at the IPL. Vijay Shankar is in this category as well for me. And like Ridman Saha, now I at least understand why they bought him, because he is a wicketkeeper, and you do traditionally need one of those in cricket. But it is strange that you're in for a 37-year-old, basally Red Bull specialist.
He's also just been told that he's not being picked for his Indian domestic team. He literally has just been told that he's not good enough to play for them, and he's just been picked up in the IPL.
Yeah, they're going to have serious problems. I mean, I think there's a realistic situation here where their middle order is going to have Vijay Shankar in at 4, and this Manohar guy who has played 14 20s. He's 27 as well. He's not like an 18-year-old who's just fresh into cricket, and people are like, oh, he's a god. He's 27. He's going to be at 5. Now Hardik,
Ahmedabad boys, I think, Jack, like they are going to be the team that we talk about who are trying to restrict teams. They do have a strong bowling contingent.
They do.
Here.
This is true. This is true. That's absolutely true. Any team that has Rashid Khan, Ferguson, Shami, any team that has Rashid Khan can be competitive. I think it's going to be difficult. I've given them a 3 out of 10 for this performance.
Yeah, well, in the chat, there was not much love. There was 1s out of 10s. I think this is kind of a 4 for me. Like,
4.
It's a lot of things have to come together, and a lot of people have to be much better cricketers than the stats and their performances in the last couple of years suggest.
Yeah. Vijay saying Vijay Shankar at 4 is peak IPL. Well, I think I really think that might happen. I've been wrong on these things before. It might not, but I think there's a good chance. Ross, we're going to go to questions now, unless you've got anything to say.
No, all good.
Right. So there were 2 earlier on from Patreon. Well, actually, there was one super chat that came through from Akash, and we didn't read it out, who wanted us to talk a little bit more about auction dynamics. I think that's an interesting place to start. We'll probably talk a little bit. I think we're going to do another podcast where we talk about best buys and stuff like that. We might elaborate on this a bit more later on, but there was definitely a huge emphasis from loads of franchises on picking up anyone who can bowl fast, and anybody who's Indian and can bat and bowl, and you can just see that in the prices. There was probably value to be had in overseas wicketkeeper batters. I think I don't. I mean, Sam Billings for 2 crore is pretty good. He could play for a team. That's sort of what I mean there. And I think this might be a controversial one. I think that with the expansion of the number of teams, maybe a team could have gone in for really cheap on an overseas spinner. Did Zampa go and Rashid and Adil Rashid go? Neither went. I think either of them. I know 2 crore isn't super cheap, but I think they might have been good deals that didn't sell. I don't know. Was there any dynamics that you saw that you wanted to touch on?
Well, I think that point there on the overseas spinners bit is quite important to talk to, right? Because Simon Hughes, who's the analyst, who has a podcast, he always has England players on, etc. He was kind of old man shouts at cloud, doing that kind of thing on Twitter, as sometimes he does, and kind of so's Michael Vaughan around Adil Rashid not being picked up. And yes, there is an argument, Jack, as you say, with the expansion of teams for them to at least get a spot in here. I think sometimes it's quite important to explain why those people get missed. And that is just because in the domestic game in India, and when it comes to the IPL, there's just a glut of supply of like pretty handy spinners. Let's be honest. Like actually the range that you get from Rashid Khan kind of being up here through to actually, I don't know, who's a middling spinner, like Rahul Chahal, right? Rahul Chahal. He's up there in the bit, but then the next bit down actually isn't that far of a gap really of what you're getting. And if you're only going to be bowling kind of 4 overs, actually it's much easier to try and find a bit of value there in the domestic market than potentially like wasting an overseas spot because you're going to only play 4 of them.
Yeah, but there are going to be some bad overseas players. I mean, I think with the expansion, you're at the point where what is the difference, between Coulter Nile and Adam Zampa? Now, Courtnall Knight is going to play games, Adam Zampa isn't, but what do they actually give to you? I think basically the more people you have in bowling seam, the worse the overseas quality of seamer gets. So you might as well get a foreign spinner in. There aren't that many foreign spinners that you get, and I wouldn't want to pay more than base price for them. But I think that was potentially an area that you could have had a bit of value. We'll move on.
Chattel has highlighted that Chiksana from Sri Lanka was picked up by CSK. Obviously, Rashid Khan's in that space. But yeah, the overseas spot is the main problem there.
So the two questions that we had on Patreon, Larniod says, do you think that overall the money was spent on positions that you guys thought they would be? Intent and six hitting all-rounders pay seemed to go for big money. Uncapped Indian all-rounders section on day one was literally insane. So that's kind of what we're saying there, isn't it, Ross? I thought mostly money was spent where I thought it would go in terms of positions. There were a couple I got wrong. I didn't think Tripathi would go for the amount that he went for example. Nitish Rana went for a lot more than I thought that he would go for.
But mid-order batting talent in the domestic market was really kind of hot property. I think where I was surprised, and I know that Harshal Patel got the purple cap last year, but the amount of money that was funneled for medium pacers in this was really quite staggering. And it kind of shows kind of some of the trends of what people do, kind of the bowling cutters into the pitch and kind of the variations that you're trying to get to there, and the kind of what that skill set is kind of in kind of a rare supply in India.
We're going to speed through some questions now. Is Faf worth the money, Ross?
No.
That's it from Patreon. I'll go over to Twitter. Do we have anything in the live chat that we...
Callum Fodder is saying bad example when you compared Coulter-Nile to Adam Zampa, because Nathan Coulter-Nile come back a bit, which is true. But the net you're really getting is
I do have to come up with an example on the spot here. I haven't done like loads of analysis on who's not as good as Adam Zampa, and I don't think that Adam Zampa would be nailed on. He'd be like your fifth option. What's the DY Patil Stadium? That's probably the one where you might want an extra spinner. You might actually want a good spinner instead of just somebody who can send down over 7, 9, 11 and 13. You might want someone who can win the game for you. And Zampa probably could do that.
I agree.
Yeah.
Akash has come back saying that the timing of appearance of the player has a huge impact on their price, which is probably a fair shout. Yeah. I still think there was bargains to be had though. I think getting Ashwin for 5 crore was actually pretty bloody good, and he was first out the hat.
Yeah. I'm not 100% sold on Ashwin in T20s. Right, Ross. I haven't pre-read any of these questions, so this could be a disaster. BCCI, the actual BCCI, has dropped us a tweet though. Titans have had the worst auction and Punjab the best. Do you agree? I think we said SRH worst, Mumbai best, but in terms of actual auction, Punjab arguably did do the best.
Yeah. I still think Sunrisers. But Sunrisers was definitely the worst, and I think it's probably a tie between Mumbai Indians and Punjab Kings.
A few other people asking how bad Sunrisers were. I think we covered how bad Sunrisers were,
and we'll do more. We will do more. Don't you worry.
It's not over. If you're listening to this, you're a Sunrisers fan, and you think this is the end of us taking the mick out of your terrible team. Maybe.
Sorry.
Yeah. Maybe find another cricket podcast. Here you go. Vinay asks, which is the worst buy, Puran, Parag, or Tawatia?
Puran, Parag, or Tawatia?
Puran, too much money. He's a good player. Yeah. Should be in the IPL. Yeah. He isn't better than Quinton de Kock. Just fact. He isn't. So why have you spent 10 crore on him? There you go. How would you rate the following in terms of value? I like these questions. Butler at 10 crore, Bairstow at 6.5, Roy at 2, and Hales at 1.5. That's from Alex Botting.
Yeah, I think if you look at the value there, I think Butler as a retention makes a lot of sense. Mm-hmm. Like Butler in that bid in the pool today to go big would have gone like around the Ishan Kishan money. He's that supreme. Yeah, he's that. I think he's that good, and offers so much with the bat that it'd be difficult not to do. Or maybe 12 crore, I reckon, 13 crore, something like that. So he's value for money there. Jason Roy is on some hot form at the moment, and surprised that he didn't go for a little bit more than that, especially as some of the teams could have done with a bit of firepower. Bairstow is an absolute steal. I think Bairstow is up there as one of the best overseas batting options that you could possibly get, and he keeps, and he was also a gun fielder. Alex Hales, we've not seen him play in the IPL, and
Not
when
for a long
we've
time.
seen,
He's played like
yeah,
twice.
and,
He's the guy who gets caught by AB de Villiers when he does that leaping boundary catch, like running round one-handed. That's Alex Hale's contribution to the IPL canon.
I think that's actually a fair whack for Alex Hales at 1.5 crore.
Yeah.
A little bit underappreciated Jason Roy, but yeah, Bairstow bargain bucket that one, and Butler fair price for retention.
We'll do a couple more Twitter ones and then anything in the chat and then wrap up. Daniel Young asks, and this is a really interesting question. Please explain why Mumbai Indians didn't just retain Ishan Kishan. If they were so desperate to have him back and pay top dollar, why not retain him and not Pollard or even Rohit and then buy one of them back? Don't think either of them would have cost 15.5 crore, would they? So first of all, they couldn't have retained Pollard because the rules were that you could only retain a maximum of 3 Indian players. So you are right, Pollard would have gone for less, but the law's the law. I think here, Ross, this was Mumbai Indians basically asking themselves who it would hurt most to lose, or who had a skill set that was hardest to replicate. Now, Rohit Sharma is the captain and the kind of emotional choice. It's quite difficult. I mean, if someone else really wanted Rohit Sharma, and bear in mind here that they might not have gone to auction, he could have gone to Lucknow or to the bad boys. That would have been quite sad, I think, for Mumbai Indians, and they'd have got a lot of grief for that. Surya Kumar Yadav is, super dynamic. I think probably a better player,
a bit more experience.
Yeah.
He's got a bit more experience.
Better player than Ishan Kishan. If they lost him at auction, I don't think they'd be able to replace him. Ishan Kishan wouldn't be a good enough replacement, or wouldn't be the same quality of player. Bumrah, one of a kind. You can't not have him. So Ishan Kishan had to go as the weakest, or the player that they could afford to lose most out of the Indian players they had. Now, I think there was it was realistic to expect that Ishan Kishan might go for more than the other 3 at the auction, but he is fundamentally a worse player here and now. And I say worse player, he's not a bad player, but he is a less great player, is probably a better way of putting it. That's sort of how I looked at that, Ross. I don't know if you had another thought.
Yeah, no, I think that's fair. And I also think that I don't understand why teams don't look to retain 4 players, because you kind of get a discount. And I know Deepak Patel in the chat's kind of saying, well, you still lose some money. You lose like 9 crore a player, and the player only gets 6. And is that unfair? Now, Harshal Patel came out and said, RCB talked to me and said, we'd rather get you back in the auction, potentially for less than 9 crore, and so you can have a bit more money because you deserve it. Bullshit. They just fucked up their retention strategy badly, and that was rubbish from them.
Yeah. Ross, anything in the live chat that's caught your fancy before we wrap up this quite long live stream?
Some Earth has asked, will you be my Valentine? Depends how much you pay me. And then the other parts, I think we're good. We've had an absolutely fantastic interaction on this, and there's been over 400 people viewing this live stream. So thank you ever so much. Hit subscribe if you haven't done so already, and if you want access to special shows or exclusive shows, not special shows,
they are special shows.
They are special, and the TCP Discord channel, then sign up for Patreon. It's only $5 a month.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, and you also get, we didn't mention this earlier in the show, you also get the whole history of the IPL, the data sorted and usable, if you're interested in data. I know a lot of people are. We've got a good file that you can have for free, which we use ourselves. Patreon.com/the cricket pod, the other thing. We did have 3 new members sign up as well on YouTube. So thank you for that, although I didn't read your names out at the time. But thank you, you 3. We'll be back another time. Goodbye. Need to end the stream. Goodbye.